Hello and welcome along to another Cheltenham Ante-Post preview. It's Daniel Hussey here, as always joined by Micheál, Deasy, and special guest this week once again is Matt Toombs. Guys, welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
So listen, we'll take a look at the betting first of all, Deasy, as I get it up on screen here now if you want to run through it.
Yeah, so we have Shishkin is top of the market at 2.02. Then you have Energumene 4.5. Shishkin is 12.0. Nuba Negra is 14.5. Grenadine is 25.0. Enva Allen is 32.0. Captain Guinness 40.0. Allaho is 50.0. Put the Kettle on is 55.0. Then your big prices in for Hitman, All Mankind, and Notebook.
Yeah, some big old prices there and some past winners, which we might get into. But for you, Matt, do you want to go through one of the trends you were discussing there in terms of favourites and how they get on in this race?
Yeah, I think that's a good preliminary point to make. It's about the inherent nature of the race and how predictable it is. And there are two factors that, when you first look at them, seem to contradict each other that are important to understand how they interact here. The first is 2 mile chasing is the most specialist division. There are usually only a few realistic contenders for this. That's because very few horses can gallop fast enough to go in the champion chase. Most of those that can aren't able to jump at that speed. But the flip side of that is it's the ultimate test of jumping over park fences, at least. And with so little margin for error, even over the modern fences, the uncertainty about which of those top horses will put it together on the day is greater than in other races. So when you combine those two factors, the winner is almost always from near the front of the market, but it's harder than you may think to work out which one of those market leaders it will be. And the stats that we've got illustrate that. 15 of the 21 renewals this century have gone to the front 2 in the market, yet 7 of the 10 odds-on shots have been beaten. And with the stellar level of form we've got this year, that's even more the case than usual. On Racing Post ratings, in the last year, Shishkin 181, Energumene and Ante-Post 179, then there's a drop to Nuba Negra 172. Now, to put that in context, only 4 of the 21 winners of the champion chase this century recorded an RPR in excess of 176 when winning the race. So that's how good the big 3 are here. History suggests the question we've got is which one of those is going to produce the stellar level of form on the day.
Yeah, there's some interesting points there, DC. For you, looking at the top of the market then, and Shishkin versus Energumene, obviously they raced against each other in the Clarence House. Give us your assessment of the race, and at the current prices, who are you kind of leading towards?
Yeah, I know that this is supposed to be, we're putting up a horse that's value or a value price in this, but like I cannot see Shishkin being beaten. I know it's a big statement to make so far out, but I thought I backed him for I picked him for the Clarence House. I thought he won well in the end. I thought he was always getting there. I think he's an absolute freak of a horse, and I can't see how Energumene is going to turn it around at Cheltenham. Because as well as that, I think that I like, if you were to pick a jockey between Paul Townend and Nico de Boinville, I would go with Paul Townend every day of the week. And what tactics is he going to use to turn around the form on Shishkin? And you can't just go on Ante-Post either. Will Paul Townend run Ante-Post and Energumene on the day? I just think there's negatives in both of them. I think Shishkin is absolutely nailed on at the price of 2.02. I thought he'd be odds on for this. I just think he's the best horse in the race by far, and probably wouldn't be investing my money at this stage now, a month out. Might as well wait until the day. I think he will be short. I think he probably could end up odds on. But I don't really see the point in picking a value play when I think that Shishkin is going to win the race anyway.
Yeah, I'm kind of toying with Shishkin, Matt, at the moment. I'm also kind of looking at a couple of the other contenders. So obviously you have the big 2 here. I think this race is kind of split into the top 2 and the next 2, in my opinion. So you've Shishkin and Energumene, and then you Ante-Post and Nuba Negra. Now, I was kind of looking at Ante-Post that if he was to race the Leopardstown and win, there could be a small bit of a value play. What's your assessment of those 2 horses, Ante-Post first and then Nuba Negra?
Well, Ante-Post has been brilliant in Ireland. You know, he's bolted up 7 of his 8 chases there. The bare form of his Punchestown Festival win, beating Allaho easily, Racing Post rating 179, is really strong. And he's a crazy price if you thought he'd run to that level at Cheltenham. Now, it was end of season form. You could be a bit cautious. Allaho had a hard race at Cheltenham. Nuba Negra seems to be best fresh. But he had run to only a few pounds lower at his 3 previous visits to Leopardstown. So his best run's only 2 runs ago. That's right in the mix. Can he produce that form? He's fragile. Last season, the only time he's had a clear run for a full season. He's had another injury, this apparently to a hamstring when flopping in the Tingle Creek. But on the plus side, I'm not concerned by the travelling. He had that excuse in the Tingle Creek. The Champion Chase was the slowest run I can recall, which doesn't suit him. He'd be miles better in a typically fast run Champion Chase. They know what to do with the tactics now. He'll have no problem getting up the hill. The Dublin Chase was 298 yards further on soft, and he was fine with that. I'm open-minded whether Cheltenham suits him. He's got to prove that. But given he had the excuse for the slowly run race last season, I'm relatively optimistic. And he's got a bit of a similar profile to Big Zeb, who won in what, with hindsight, was a crazy price of 10 to 1 a few years ago, having done pretty much what Chak and Bassois had done in the previous Champion Chase and in the Tingle Creek. Now, he is 10, but Moscow Flyer, Sprinter Sacre and Special Tiara have all won as veterans. They don't finish tired and have hard races as they do over 3 miles. So it's easier to hold your form into the veteran stage. So if you've got balls of steel and are solely interested in making a profit rather than getting a run for your money and enjoying the ride, then I think Shishkin and Bassois a good price at 12.0, but you have to have that Ante-Post mentality because there's a decent chance he wouldn't turn up. But if you could hypothetically run this race in 6 weeks' time on 12 occasions, I'd be pretty optimistic he'd win more than once.
That's very interesting now on that side of things. And I'm kind of you're making a good case to tip me over the edge on Shishkin. Maybe a little bit on Nuba Negra. He was a fast finishing second in last year's Champion Chase, and you mentioned it was a slowly ran race. I guess good ground could be the key to him, and even on some of his best form, I don't know if he's quite up to the level of Shishkin and Energumene.
Yeah, he's probably the hardest of the four to assess. Yeah, does he stay the 2 miles in elite company in a truly run race? He's got loads of speed, he jumps really well. He should have won last year. The unprecedented crawl really suited him, but he was in the wrong place. He stumbled at the last, switched outside, not inside, didn't quite get there. Then at Punchestown, when they made a much stronger gallop, travelled well again, but folded tamely. Now, that was the end of the season. He might have been over the top. His profile is certainly his best when fresh. Is he quite good enough? Yeah, horses do tend to get further as they get older. If you don't get the 2 miles in elite company, they improve with age. You think about a horse like Special Tiara, who was a blatant non-stale and beaten nearly 16 lengths by Cider Grouchy as a 7-year-old. You got the trick better and better, and finally one's a 10-year-old. So Nuba Negra travels so well. He might be a back to lay play on the day. He could well be a place bet on the day because he's a pretty solid proposition for that. But I think it might just be next season before he really starts seeing out the trip strongly enough to beat some of these. They're really high standard this year if the main protagonists get there.
Yeah, Deasy, for you, maybe on the Shishkin and Nuba Negra cases, can you see either of them troubling the front of the market with Shishkin or Energumene?
Well, we're obviously recording this before the Dublin Racing Festival, so I mean, if Shishkin bolts up at the weekend, he will probably half in price, and he wouldn't really be in each way a win place bet at that maybe for all that he's a great chance coming second or third. I think then the English horses are going to be underbet because, or the other English horses besides Shishkin are going to be underbet because everyone is just going to be looking at Energumene and Shishkin and Bassois. So Nuba Negra would be, I think, like out of all the rest of them right now, if you were looking for something to back the place, I think he's definitely a solid one at the price he is. Like, I don't think he's going to have a run. I think they want to keep him fresh for it. Even looking down the list there, like there's some crazy big prices for horses like the likes of even old Politolog. I know he's 11, but he's a very big price there now. I think what is he? He's a triple figure price on the exchange. You know, there will be some value there on the day, I think, for the other horses to maybe hit, and especially with extra place markers, we could be going if there's a good feel in this, might be getting 4 places. So there will be other angles into it for the place money. But I like Nuba Negra. I think he's a good horse. He was very unlucky last year, and in fairness to the Skeletons, they are able to get one ready for Cheltenham. We know that. So this will be, you know, he will turn up and run his race today, and he won't need too much wrong, I'd say, to go in his favour for him to be hitting the frame and to be challenging at the front.
Yeah, Matt, maybe some of the other trends now. I tipped up Put the Kettle On last year, and I'm still living off it, beating Shishkin and Bassois at double figure prices, to be honest with you. But one of the main trends I used last year to kind of help me along with that selection was the previous Arkle winners having a really good record in the last, say, 19-20 renewals.
Yeah, that's right. And it's not particularly surprising. This is supposed to be the trial for next season's Champion Chase. Also, the Broadway is a very good trial for the Gold Cup, but I think it's even more so, Doc, because this is so specialist. There are very few of them, and if you've proven yourself over course and distance, it's not surprising that they do well. What's probably surprising is how underbet they've been. That 213% profit is more than you'd expect it to be. You'd think people will be latching on to the Arkle winners more. Clearly, they're going to this year because it's Shishkin, but that's definitely a point for generally betting in this race.
Yeah, and then maybe a final trend in terms of what else you're seeing with the champion chase and grade one winning hurdlers around 2 miles, and in terms of how they get on the race, because it's always fascinating to see, you know, a grade 1 winning hurdler. How do they get on over fences? Is that form always replicated?
Yeah, and it's because raw speed is so important in the champion chase. Sometimes you've got the situation where the Shishkin and Energumene haven't clashed. You've got often had Energumene stayed and say run in the Dublin chase and Cheltenham Trends gone straight to Cheltenham. You'd be having the three of them, say, with no interlocking direct form. When that happens, often you can see when they were running it, particularly in open company or very good novice races like the Supreme, you can see the amount of speed they've got better from that. And that's why the grade 1 winning hurdlers, the hurdlers who've had very high marks, Racing Post ratings of 160 or more, have been profitable to follow. People don't look at that side of it, the raw speed, as much as they should.
Yeah, final point then for you, Deasy, on the race. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of how you see it setting up? You mentioned tactics at the start with Energumene against Shishkin. I guess the fact it's not a match anymore and there's going to be other horses in the race kind of opens that up. And obviously, if Willie Mullins has another horse in Shishkin Poursoir there as well, it'd be interesting if he dictates the speed or the race for Energumene or vice versa there.
Well, I mean, like for Shishkin Poursoir to win, the way Matt kind of described it there, he's got to need to use Energumene as a pacemaker, which he did the last time. But I don't think that they're going to go out again and try and go off out in front and beat Shishkin that way, because it didn't work at Ascot. And holding up tactics and like something else to make the run, there could be one of the Paul Nicholas horses or first floor, someone could go off in front as well. Like, so I think Shishkin is very versatile in terms of tactics. He'll be able to sit up with them or he can stay off them. And proven over Cheltenham, he has like the grade 1 winning hurdler form, he has the Arkle form. I don't like being this kind of like, the favourite is going to win in any race, but I just think he's just the best horse in the race, and he's already done it at Cheltenham, and there's so much in his favour, and the price, even at the moment, if you're into that kind of thing, I would put money on now to win this at 2.02.
Yeah, I'm reluctantly following you in, just given the prices. You can obviously see the price in all the sports books is a lot shorter than the exchange. I'd say maybe the multiples angle there or the ACA angle there, but for me, anything around even money for Shishkin is a really good price, because my initial reaction after the race was that obviously it was very close, but the more I look at it, the more you look at the right-handed factor for Energumene, which everyone was talking up beforehand that Ascot would suit him more than Cheltenham. Now all of a sudden we're hearing obviously the champion chases ran a little bit shorter than Ascot stuff. People are trying to make the argument to suit the Energumene narrative, and for me, I think the sportsbook have it about right. The way that he's about the 1.67 mark. So if you're getting even money at 2.02 on Matchbook, I think that is a cracking bet even at this stage, because he'll be obviously trained. He won't be running until Cheltenham, and given his Arkle run, all the trends Matt mentioned, despite the good case for Shishkin at the start, I am going to go for Shishkin. Matt, any final thoughts on the race itself in terms of how it's going to set up, or any other horses to mention? I know Grenadine's running in Leopardstown.
Yeah, on the way it's going to set up, I'm expecting Shishkin Poursoir to make the running and Energumene to sit in behind him. Just on that point between the Energumene-Shishkin rematch, I think that the pre-Clarence House consensus, there are a couple of things that I agree, maybe we did get that wrong. Certainly people like me did. One of them was trip. Everyone was talking about stamina favouring Energumene. It's going to be 231 yards shorter here. And because Energumene started off over 2.5, the turns were in the Broadway was mooted. The theory was he was the stayer. But at Ascot, he was all about cruising speed. I mean, Shishkin looked to outstay him, to my mind, not to do him for a turn of foot. So it's possible that that more of a speed test at Cheltenham might help. Similarly with the ground, everyone was saying Shishkin wants a sound surface and Energumene wants cut. That's partly the Mullins Henderson horses generally and historic trainer comments. But Shishkin's best form is all on soft ground. Energumene's best novice form last year was on his only go on yielding. So it might be that the better ground will suit Energumene rather than Shishkin. Possibly the biggest point that's not been discussed is that Shishkin was really battle hardened. You know, he had a really good battle 2 years ago in the Supremes, won an Arkle. Energumene's only had 1 hurdles run, 5 runs over fences coming into this. He won every jumps race by more than 8 lengths. It was his first battle. Shishkin was much more used to it. So you'd expect him to improve a bit more for the experience. So whilst I agree that Shishkin is much the most likely winner, at the prices, you're basically giving Shishkin about a 50% chance of winning and Energumene about a 22% chance of winning. I'm not convinced that Shishkin is much more than twice as likely to win. So I actually think that come the day, saying the opposite, I think the sportsbook prices will go, if they all get there, will move more towards the exchange prices rather than the other way around.
Yeah, I agree on that. I don't think that like Shishkin is going to go off at 1.67 long odds on, because even if he opens up on the day at around that, there will be so much money for the Irish horses that it will bring them back a lot closer to even. So like there probably is a bit of value back, I don't know, but I don't think you're going to be getting much worse pricing today at the off.
It's a fascinating betting heat, isn't it? And given if Shishkin performs, you know, it's going to be that's half the fun, isn't it? Watching the exchange prices before the off. And
it should be the highlight of the festival. If those 3 horses get there, they are all elite level horses. It'd just be fantastic. I can't wait.
Yeah. And you always hear the jockeys talk about this is the race they want to be in because it's just the chase is going at 2 miles, going at that speed. It's some buzz. Can't wait for it.
We are too. If you're listening on the podcast, thanks a mil for listening to us. Do catch our horse racing previews, and on the YouTube channel, we'd really appreciate the thumbs up. Until next time on our Ante-Post previews, take care.